Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Noémie Ndiaye. I am an assistant professor in the English department at the University of Chicago. And I want to thank you all for tuning into this first installment.
J'aimerais vous remercier de partager avec nous cette entrevue dans la série Black Baroque.
About our sponsors. This event is made possible by the generosity of the University of Chicago, and more specifically, the Court Theater, the Committee on Theater and Performance Studies, the English Department, the Department of Romance, Languages and Literature, the Center for the Study of Gender and Sexuality, and the Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture. Most importantly, I would like to thank our featured artist today, Bintou Dembélé. And I would like to thank my accomplice and partner in design, Professor Gabrielle Randle-Bent, as well as University of Chicago PhD candidate, Brandy Williams, without whom this event would not run as smoothly. So thank you all for your help. It is a privilege to be here. I would like to say a few words before I introduce our guest today. I would like to start by introducing the conceit at the core of this artist interview series. The Baroque is generally defined as a stylistic departure from Renaissance classicism, which follows different timelines in different countries. Probably derived from the Portuguese word barroco, which is a word that designates an irregularly shaped pearl, such as these. The term refers to those pearls that were often used in jewelry in the early modern period in order to create gorgeous and eccentric new shapes. The term refers to an aesthetic based on beautiful irregularity, precious irregularity, perpetual movement, self-referentiality, and a lavish profusion of carefully contrived ornaments. While as a cultural project, the Baroque is usually associated in scholarly discourse with Catholic Europe and counter-Reformation efforts, the Baroque aesthetics actually operated across early modern Western Europe. And one thing that strikes me is the profound affinities between that aesthetic and the aesthetic that emanates from your choreographic work, Bintou, and from the work of many artists from the African diaspora. There is indeed a fine compatibility and a productive one between those two aesthetics. And I would like to illustrate that compatibility by sharing with you a gorgeous painting by contemporary Nigerian painter. Let me just find the screen so I can share it with you. There we go. I hope you can all see this painting. This painting is by contemporary Nigerian painter Wole Lagunju, and it's called Of Race, Mythology, and Redefinitions of Storytelling. It's from 2014, and you can see how it powerfully combines Baroque iconography with a Yoruba mask and a futuristic touch. This is a future-oriented reckoning with the Baroque past. And that is one meaning of the phrase Black Baroque. That coinage is based upon profound affinities and upon the world of possibilities that emanates from such aesthetic and artistic affinities. But the Baroque also refers beyond the aesthetic realm in the historic realm to a time period, roughly from the middle of the 16th to the mid-18th century, a historical structure connected to the emergence of the modern absolutist state, and also a historical moment which saw the launch of the colonial project and the genocidal tactics of settler colonialism, the development of color-based slavery in the Atlantic world, and succinctly put, the transnational invention of whiteness. Central to this invention was the racialization of Blackness. The Baroque is the moment when Blackness, which had hitherto been thought of as one type of human difference among many others, becomes a racial difference, justifying unequal distribution of power, rights, and resources. Blackness comes into being as a racial category in the Baroque age. I think of Blackness as a Baroque invention. Because of that major and long-lasting epistemological shift, the relationship between the Baroque and the African diaspora is necessarily always already fraught. And in that sense, there is a gap, a slash at the core of the phrase Black Baroque. In this interview series, we will feature Black theater makers who, in their practice, reckon simultaneously with the potential affinities and the gap, the slash, at the core of the Black Baroque. I am delighted to introduce the first artist on this series, Bintou Dembélé. I encourage our spectators to peruse Dembele's full biography, which is provided on the registration page of the Black Baroque series. But for now, I will mention just a few facts. I will mention that Bintou is a star. She is one of the major artists of the hip hop movement in France. As a dancer and a choreographer, she has worked with artists such as MC Solar, Grand Corps Malade, Sofiatou Kosoko, the photographer Denis Darzac, and the choreographer Houman Sharifi. In 2002, she created Rualité, an artistic and cultural platform that has produced many of her works, including L'Assise, LOL, Mon appart en dit long, ZH, Strat, Quartet, Le syndrome de l'initié, which have been performed in France, Belgium, Burma, Chile, French Guiana, Italy, Macedonia, Mali,
Au
Sweden.
Mali, en Suède et en Suisse. Je remarque que les US ne font pas partie de cette liste et cela devrait changer bientôt. Donc, elle a collaboré avec de nombreux chercheurs.
The list now includes the University of Chicago. In 2017, Clément Cogitoré invited her to choreograph his film Les Indes Galantes for Troisième Scène, Opéra de Paris. Their partnership expanded 2 years later when she choreographed Cogitoré's production of Jean-Philippe Rameau's Les Indes Galantes at the Opéra Bastille, which we will discuss today. In 2020, she became an associate artist at Les Ateliers Médicis, Clichy-sous-Bois, Montfermeil, and she is one of 10 international artists invited to participate in the 10th year anniversary celebration of the Centre Pompidou-Metz. The Lyon Opera has invited her to create a solo performance for a ballet dancer as part of the project 30 Dancers, 30 Solos. I am honored to be in Bintou's presence today. Thank you, Bintou. We are incredibly lucky to have you with us today. It is probably useful for me at this point to just say a few words about the plot of Les Indes Galantes before I yield the floor to Bintou. Les Indes Galantes, or The Amorous Indies, a promising title. This opera-ballet, with music by Jean-Philippe Rameau and a libretto written by Louis Fuselier, was premiered by the Académie Royale de Musique in Paris in 1735. The genre of the commercial opera-ballet emerged and thrived in the 18th century, the later part of the Baroque period, but in its structure, as well as in its aesthetic sensibility, it very much drew on the older tradition of the Baroque chord ballets that had thrived in France since the very beginning of the 17th century. In terms of structure, it contains an allegorical prologue focused on the contention between the goddess of love and the goddess of war. And in its final form, that prologue is followed by 4 entrées, 4 acts. Desperate to see so many young people follow the goddess of war, Hebe, the goddess, sends her messengers to the Indies, and the 4 self-contained acts that follow that prologue show us what happens in the places that those messengers reach. Those acts have distinct and separate plots, but they are unified by the theme of love in exotic places, including the Ottoman Empire, Peru, Persia, and North America. In the first entrée, Emilie, a French woman, now in the power of an enamored Turkish bashaw, is unexpectedly reunited with her shipwrecked lover, Valère, and the bashaw yields Emilie to Valère because in the past, Valère proved himself very merciful towards him. He sends them back to France, laden with riches. In the second entrée, a Peruvian Inca woman, Fanny, renounces her people's faith for the love of her Spanish lover, Carlos, while the sun god priest Huascar, who pines after her, throws stones into a volcano, successfully provokes a volcanic eruption, and throws himself into that volcano in the middle of a religious celebration. In the third entrée, two Persian princes, Ali and Takmas, are in love with, respectively, each other's slave, Zahir and Fatim. Within the garden of Ali's seraglio, Ali's harem, Takmas and Fatim cross-dress in order to discover whether Zahir and Ali, respectively, love them back and find out, ultimately, that the answer is yes. In the last entrée of this opera ballet, a Native American woman called Zima fends off the courting of a Spanish and a French colonist. She chooses instead a man of her own background, a Dario. The scene ends with a ceremony that reeks of wish fulfillment when Native Americans and European colonists smoke a peace pipe together. The libretto is, at its core, as you can see, concerned with the question of the desirability, the undesirability, and the affordances of interracial love for the colonial project. Indeed, in the entrée Les Incas du Pérou, an Inca woman chooses a romantic partner, a Spanish colonist over an Inca man. In the Turkish entry, a French woman chooses a Frenchman over a Turkish man. In the Native American entry, a Native American woman chooses a Native American man over a Spaniard and a Frenchman. In the Persian entry, Takmas trembles when he takes the cross-dressed Fatim for a Polish male slave who might have found his way into his seraglio. In the decades that followed the creation of this opera ballet in 1735, the dramaturgy of Les Indes Galantes evolved in order to foreclose the possibilities of interracial romance present in the original libretto. In particular, the last act, the Native American entrée, is a piece that enshrines the foreclosure of interracial romance for the French. It was added to the opera ballet 1 year after its creation. It became a permanent and extremely popular fixture. And I want to note that this specific entrée, the Native American one, has a specific connection to the city of Chicago. It establishes a special connection between Les Indes Galantes and Chicago. Indeed, in 1725, French settlers in Illinois sent Chief Agapit Chicagou of the Michigamea and 5 other chiefs to Paris. On November 25th, 1725, they met with King Louis XV. Chicagou had a letter read that pledged allegiance to the French crown. The Native American chiefs later danced in the Théâtre Italien, inspiring musician Rameau to compose the final scene of that fantasized colonial submission, which your production of Les Indes Galantes so powerfully subverts, Bintou. And I'm sure we'll get back to that final moment. So, this was my introduction to Les Indes Galantes. I will now let Bintou take over and do her presentation. I just want to let you know a little bit about how this interview is going to proceed in terms of structure. Bintou will first talk about her work, her creative process, her experience developing Les Indes Galantes for about 25 minutes. I will then ask her a bunch of questions for about 30 minutes, and we will then open the floor for a 20 minutes long Q&A with the audience. Please make sure to drop your questions into the chat box, and I will translate and read them. From now on, in the interest of time, I will switch to French until we reach the conclusion of this event. If you click on the language icon at the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll be able to choose the language in which you wish to listen to the rest of this event, French or English. Many of you might want to tick the English box in the coming seconds. I will then conclude this event in English. The floor is yours, Bintou. C'est à toi.
Oui, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Merci Noémie pour cette invitation. Je suis vraiment ravie et en même temps désolée de ne pas être parmi vous. Je devais être en résidence à Chicago pendant 15 jours et suite aux mesures sanitaires, ça a été annulé. Néanmoins, je me retrouve
in Chicago for 15 days, but because of the corona, this visit was cancelled. Now I'm in Rome at the Villa Médicis and I'm with you, but virtually. Now I would like to ask Noémie to show you the movie Les Indes Galantes, which was directed by Clément Cogitor for the platform Troisième Scène. It lasts about 5 minutes. Well, enjoy.
Merci Noémie. Donc voilà, je réitère mes remerciements auprès de Noémie, avec qui nous organisons ce rendez-vous.
With whom we organized this meeting, also all the different various departments who made it possible. Cultural French service with in Chicago and Atelier Médicis in Clichy-Montfermeil and Monsieur Cogidor and Monsieur Vidier and the dancers and also Isabelle Lenet and all the artistic team that worked on Indes Galantes and members of the team of the Opéra de Paris. So here I would like to present myself, give you a context so you know from where I'm talking to, and talk to you about the creation process of the troisième scène, the film that you just saw, and also the creation process of the l'opéra.
Auprès des publics qui ont pu assister aux représentations, mais aussi à ceux des réseaux sociaux, à travers la diffusion de la captation de l'opéra en entier sur la chaîne Arte. Donc, je suis Bintou Dembélé, enfant de Demba Dembélé et de Salimata Dembélé, soninké du Sénégal. Je suis née ni banlieue, ni campagne, dans une famille de 5 enfants de confession musulmane. J'ai grandi dans un environnement où le racisme était ambiant.
I lived in an environment where racism was everywhere, and I started dancing in 1995. In 1985, I am neither woman nor man. It's an expression from Kazé, the artist Kazé, and I really appreciate it. I am married to Saba and a parent of a 3-year-old child. I'm a hip hop, a child of the hip hop, and from the street, and that created my soul and my body. I take the power from the street, but I want rupture and have my chosen family,
à la masculinité imposante et au milieu LGBT+, raciste. Et aussi la rupture avec des fantasmes liés à l'Afrique et une africanité recherchée. J'ai aussi une maladie des yeux qui est un kératocone, donc c'est une déformation des cornées en forme de poire, donc ce qui fait que je suis astigmate et myope. Donc, dans ma danse, je déploie une énergie puissante avec l'idée qu'elle puisse épouser les flux des autres et que ça ne passe pas forcément par la vue et que du coup les malvoyants puissent être bienvenus pour voir mes spectacles. La fugue dont je vous parle, qui peut s'allier au marronnage dont je vous parlerai tout à l'heure, m'a donc permis d'habiter le silence, de traverser mes peurs, de converser avec l'intime, convoquer la mémoire du corps et de danser avec mes tensions, mes torsions qui ont jailli. Je suis un être hors sol. J'ai récemment vécu comme une renaissance ma danse et ma pensée à l'arrivée des réseaux sociaux qui nous a permis de nous connecter à des pensées universitaires, militantes, etc. Et qui, du coup, a affirmé ma démarche artistique à partir d'une pluralité culturelle qui a été tue jusqu'à présent dans le contexte français. Donc, voilà, je vais vous parler du processus de création du film Troisième scène, qui, pour moi, a été une
movie. It was the first experience. There were several adventures of Les Indes Galantes with Clément Cogitor. So the movie you just saw was created in 2017. It was an order that given to assigned to Cogitor for the digital platform for the Opéra de Paris in 2015, created in 2015 by Clément Dutier, and this platform wanted to invite new artists to reinvent works of arts from the classical repertoire. So Clément he chose Les Indes Galantes. He said it was something that he used to listen on a regular basis, and he selected this sequence from the great calumet of peace, great pipe of peace, And our meeting was made with the support of Isabelle Launay from a university professor and who teaches aesthetics of contemporary dances. And at the time, Clément offered to work with me, and with the support of an artist called Basile, who had already did short movies on dance, and I didn't know Les Indes Galantes nor Rameau. So Clément sent me an extract of the sequence of the Savages, and for me it was more I wanted to have the right to answer to this version that was very problematic. So I briefed the dancers, I updated them on the context of slavery at the time, and when we talked about savages, what that meant. So it was a construct that enabled the legitimization of deportations and the violence that was applied on the savages. So this is my experience of the theater, but also I developed dance. I said through my experience with the street, competitions, dance, and the circle is my context. It's not. This is not an energy. It's an energy from competition. Not. It's a safer.
Un moment de freestyle en fait. D'autres pourraient parler d'improvisation. Et là, en l'occurrence, le freestyle est organisé parce qu'il y a des passages chorégraphiques. Je pourrais aussi parler de moments de palabre, parce que pour moi, le crump est une danse de palabre, en fait. Et en l'occurrence, vous avez des protagonistes en fait, qui prennent le centre et s'adressent et acquiescent, s'adressent à l'assemblée. Et en fait, cette assemblée-là, à travers la hype, acquiesce ce qui peut être évoqué par la personne qui est au centre. Donc là, il s'agit bien d'un cipher, un moment de palabre, en fait. Le crump est pour moi au bon endroit. Il y a dans cette danse des torsions, des tensions qui se déploient. Donc le dialogue avec le baroque me semblait effectivement judicieux. Concernant la musique, donc ce morceau qui est Forêt paisible, musicalement il est construit sous la forme d'un capo, A-B-A. Donc en fait c'est l'idée de, enfin en gros c'est un crescendo en fait. Donc on a d'abord la partie musicale, ensuite l'arrivée des solistes, accompagnés par la suite des chœurs, et voilà en fait. Pour moi c'était l'idée c'était vraiment d'essayer de temporiser cette montée-là en tension pour qu'à la fin, ce soit une explosion, quoi. Donc, à la fin de ce film, en fait, il y a un point culminant où une des danseuses qui s'appelle Ndiaye est en contrepoint, en fait, avec l'ambiance très, très dense qui se passe dans l'assemblée. Et ce contrepoint est affirmé par une levée de sa main où je lui signifier que cette levée-là pouvait faire figurer la sortie des voix des solistes qui allaient du coup palabrer avec la tension dans laquelle Wolf, qui se trouve en face d'elle, allait lui figurer par une gestuelle proche du rappeur en tension, et que ce dialogue se créait en contraste en fait. C'est un moment qui est fort pour moi et qui donne les prémices de ce qui sera un mouvement collectif qu'on va retrouver à la fin, qui est que finalement, toute l'Assemblée se met à lever le poing, en fait. Donc, au début, c'était simplement ce petit groupe de 5-6 personnes qui avaient cette main levée, mais au fur et à mesure des prises pour faire le film, en fait, il s'est avéré que toute l'Assemblée a joué le jeu, quoi. Donc, c'était magnifique. On a à peu près une vingtaine de danseurs, de crump, et le reste des gens qui sont là sont des figurants qui sont avec leur téléphone pour pouvoir filmer, et ça faisait partie du processus qu'on puisse les voir faire des photos et des films en fait, et on a par moments des déploiements des danseurs qui viennent à gauche, à droite et même en face de la caméra, quoi. Donc là, il s'agissait du processus de création
the creative process for this movie, the 5-minute long movie, which was very well received, very successful. So following this second experience, the creation process of the opera ballet, so the movie was an order made to Clément, and it didn't come out. It was seen by Stéphane Isner, the director at the time, who was really touched and made the request to Clément to have the entire opera ballet, 3 hours and 40 minutes of performance. Clément was surprised. He had never done any opera ballet before, performance of that kind, but he accepted. So this order was executed for the celebration of the 350th year of Opéra de Paris and 30th year of Opéra Bastille. So it was a risk to offer this to someone who had no idea about this environment. So Stéphane chose the artistic director, Monsieur Alarcon, and the team, and the scenograpist, the dramaturgist, a musical direction, and the lighting. So Clément Cogitos wanted me to accompany him for this new episode. And he had to fight for it. It wasn't accepted that it wasn't easy to do that. So it was an explosion. And finally, I was 44 at the time. As I was saying, it was the first experience for Clément and myself, and not necessarily something new for me, because I had already seen my brother, who's also a dancer. There were 3 in my family who were dancing. My brother was invited by Colin Serrault to do a version of the chauve-souris, the bat, and during that time, Charlie Chaplin's grandson was there. So in 2000, there was hip-hop dancers who had been accepted in the Bastille. So it wasn't the first time, but the fact to have Baroque, usually Baroque is in Garnier, not in Bastille. So that was a first. That was the thing that happened for the first time. So during the first meeting, the production first meeting, I had to go back to the creation process. So quickly, I was uncomfortable with terms that I did not know very well. I heard corps de ballet, the ballet troupe, and they were talking about the creation time. It was about a month and a half. So I thought 1 month and a half was very short for a 3 hour and 40 minutes performance. And for me personally, I had never done any opera ballet. So I offered that a training be implemented to reduce the time and to be on time. And so the word
être une house, une fame, un crew, et que c'est à partir de là qu'on allait créer cette traversée-là, quoi. Donc, pour cette poursuite, en fait, Clément, il avait, dans sa démarche artistique, envie de donner une dimension actuelle à ces Indes Galantes. Donc, il avait envie d'évoquer des différentes formes de domination contemporaine, en fait. Donc, il était question que les entrées, hein, on ne parle pas d'actes, mais d'entrées, que ces entrées-là figurent sous différentes formes. Donc, le prologue, par exemple, c'est le monde de la mode. Ensuite, on a plutôt la traite des migrants sur la première entrée. Ensuite, on va avoir plutôt le monde de la rue, l'underground, j'ai envie de dire. Ensuite, on va plutôt avoir le monde de la nuit et de la prostitution. Et on termine par le milieu carcéral, en fait. Donc, ce qu'il me faut vous dire là, c'est qu'il y a eu récemment différentes versions des Indes Galantes qui ont été faites par donc, William Christie, où lui-même avait fait appel à des danseurs hip-hop. Désolé pour l'année, je ne me souviens plus. Et il y a aussi Sidi Larbi Cherkaoui qui a fait une version des Indes Galantes. Et si je me souviens bien, Blanc Ali. Donc voilà, donc, dans ce processus de création, Clément avait en tête au départ de faire appel à des circassiens, des danseurs classiques et des danseurs contemporains. Et donc, dans le déroulé qui me faisait des différentes séquences, je lui ai fait une contre-proposition qui était plutôt de faire appel à des vogueurs, vogueuses, des b-boys, des b-girls, des danseurs électro. Donc ça, l'électro, c'est une danse qui est née en France suite aux révoltes urbaines, à mon sens. Je vous en parlerai plus tard. J'ai fait aussi appel au flexing, qui est une danse qui n'est pas arrivée en Europe ni en France, et beaucoup plus développée aux États-Unis, qui est une espèce de danse en basket. Enfin, c'est des personnes qui dansent sur les pointes, en fait. C'est des torsions des chevilles. C'est assez impressionnant. Et pour cette séquence-là, j'ai fait appel à Cal Hunt, qui est un danseur de New York. Donc voilà, en fait, pour moi, le fait de faire appel à des circassiens, des danseurs classiques et des danseurs contemporains, c'est chose que j'avais déjà vu avec la compagnie Montalvo Hervieux, qui avait eu dans leur démarche l'idée de réunir des danseurs classiques, contemporains, hip-hop, afro-contemporains, afro-caribéens, avec de la vidéo projetant des architectures baroques, des animaux, et le tout sur une musique baroque, donc ça pouvait être Bach ou d'autres choses. Et tout ça, pour moi, n'était pas sans rappeler les exhibitions humaines popularisées au 19e siècle. Donc, je n'avais pas envie de reproduire la même mécanique. J'allais tomber dans le piège, sinon. Donc, je voulais prendre le temps de vous dire pourquoi j'ai fait le choix de plusieurs danses street dance, et que pour moi, c'était l'occasion de pouvoir réunir des danses qui n'avaient jamais pu converser ensemble. Donc, le prétexte de pouvoir faire cet opéra, c'était le prétexte de pouvoir réunir et de rassembler des danseurs de street dance de différentes générations. Moi qui fais partie de cette première génération, j'ai pu du coup solliciter la House of Revlon. Donc pour moi, le voguing, c'est vraiment synonyme de célébration. C'est vraiment synonyme de flamboyance. Néanmoins, j'y interroge la projection sur la féminité blanche. Mais néanmoins, ce que j'apprécie dans le travail de Vinny, qui est le father et qui m'a intronisé mother, même si je ne sais pas faire du voguing, c'est qu'il détourne cette projection en injectant une africanité dans ses gestes. Donc, il va rajouter, au lieu d'avoir des perruques lisses, ils vont avoir des rajouts qui sont tressés. Donc, voilà, pour moi, c'est déjà une manière de tordre cette projection. Et dans ces mouvements, il va y injecter aussi des danses afro et des danses congolaises, en fait. Beaucoup de déhanchés. Et pour moi, c'est déjà une manière de s'approprier le voguing qui part de cette africanité propre à nous en France. Et cette forme du coup de déambulation propre au kiki ball ou au ballroom me semblait être adéquate pour la prise d'espace en fait. Et notamment, c'est vrai que j'avais l'intention de l'exploiter dans cette séquence du prologue qui devait nous parler de la mode, et finalement ça s'est avéré être à un autre endroit que j'ai pu déployer cette danse-là. J'ai aussi du coup travaillé avec le walking. Le walking est un mélange de locking et de voguing, en fait. C'est un dialogue qui était possible pour moi avec l'électro dont je vous parlais tout à l'heure. Donc, c'est beaucoup de mouvements de bras, il y a beaucoup de mouvements circulaires. Pareil, voilà. Pour moi, il y avait des dialogues et une complémentarité par rapport au voguing et à l'électro. Il y a eu aussi du popping. Donc là, on est plutôt sur des contractions et des décontractions musculaires qui groove sur de la funk, mais pas simplement, et qui permet de développer des mouvements plutôt en effet comme le slow motion, le ralenti, qu'on peut aussi observer dans le travail du Marceau, le speed control, donc qui donne un peu des effets comme des objets filmiques, et donc voilà, d'autres danses comme le tutting ou les
like
waves.
tutting and wave.
Donc voilà, il y a des personnalités comme
So you have personalities like Electric Boogaloo, who made this dance popular, like Les Indes or Salah in France or Bastille. I kept the crump. I kept working with the crumpers with whom I had been working on the movie. To me, it was valuable to be able to allow yourself to keep with the adventure. It went beyond a work of choreography. I think it was a matter here of transferring a dance from one to another, from the bebop to the crump, to see what it is to live in that world and finally to find yourself in contemporary stages. So for me, crump is a cry of the body that's accompanied by the hype. You know, these encouraging cries that we find in voguing, where it's not called hype, but in voguing, you have deeps, people who are falling in the center and everybody's encouraging them. In crump, it's called hype. There's no words, cries like these ones or shouts.
Au centre. Et donc, ça permet un dialogue radical et possible avec la communauté, les communautés. J'ai aussi poursuivi mon travail avec le b-boying, donc c'est ma discipline de prédilection. Hein, voilà, c'est toutes les figures au sol qu'on retrouve composées de torsions du corps, des manières d'appréhender l'espace. J'ai le grand souvenir, moi, d'avoir été happé par l'émission HIP présentée par Sydney. Il était sur la tête quand il présentait l'émission, et en fait, cette image m'est restée avec l'idée que c'était de cette manière que j'allais percevoir le monde, de le voir à l'envers, en fait. Donc voilà, j'ai continué avec des b-boys. Et donc, je vous disais qu'il y avait ce flexing, qui est une danse que j'ai découvert du coup à travers Lil Buck. Et sur l'Opéra Ballet, on a fait appel à Cal Hunt, qui est un magnifique danseur, qui fait un duo avec Sabine Ndiaye sur Viens Imen, sur la deuxième entrée, si je me souviens bien. Donc voilà, je vous disais que c'était des espèces de torsions des chevilles, des jambes, des bras, en fait, voilà, pour moi, c'est une espèce de danse classique de la rue, en fait. Et que ces torsions-là figurent la réalité de la street, en fait.
These movements show the reality of it. And I was telling you, there is electro, which is a dance that was born in the 2000s in the clubs in the Paris region. Unfortunately, these clubs were very racist, so they were set aside and they were recuperated at a party called Tectonic. This dance was called Tectonic, but actually it was a party that made commercial this dance. And in fact, it was in reality electro music. However, they succeeded in maintaining that dance and sculpture with a space that was social networks, and now it's knowing a resurgence. So that's for electro. So convening, gathering all these dances, all these artists who were in their 20s or their 40s even, and they were able to rub elbows outside of the clubbing, outside of the street, and who could project themselves and say what our cultures, how our cultures combining. Well, Noémie, thank you for putting pictures of the rehearsals. These photos were made by Feroz Solami, who was my choreographer assistant. He's as well a dancer. It's important for me to have someone like this to take the pictures, someone who is also in the background. For the Indes Galantes, a lot of questions were raised to me who is this opera ballet targeting? And by listening to it, it was clear that it was not, I was not the target, but it allowed me to ask the question, okay, who are we going to address? Who are we going to target? I was asking the question, were we supposed to face this celebration of the commission of Rameau to celebrate the outpost at the time? I often said that Les Indes Galantes was a commission that was presented to Rameau to celebrate the outposts. In the beginning, there were 4 entrées, okay? And the Les Sauvages entrée was made later when Rameau discovered the group of autochthons, of Native Americans, and that gave him the idea to add the last sequence, the last entrée of Les Sauvages, which was born later. And therefore, I wondered, where was I in all of this, okay, when we were celebrating 350 years of the opera? Among the artists who were invited for this 350 years celebration, we wanted the requirements were to have a lot of golden elements. I'm thinking about Bodo Kaselushi, who had play with golden elements. I would like us also to remind the French context at the time, in 2017, when we finished that project. So the French context was a world context. In the beginning, we had Theo, who was raped by policemen. There was also an interview with Emmanuel Macron. There were lots of storms. The right-wingers were up in Germany, and also the migrant smuggling and trafficking. So this was a time of chaos that's still tense, and we're still in it. There was a sentence that attracted our attention. So I would like to thank Noémie for the previous photo. These are all the dancers. You have everyone here. It's a picture that's with me that shows how we are proud to be where we are. To keep going, there is a sentence that attracted our attention, Clément and myself. Les Indes Galantes are young people who are dancing above a volcano in full eruption. In the beginning, I didn't hear the music of Rameau. I think it was actually overwhelmed by the libretto of Fuselier. So I went to iTunes to find a version with the instrumentals only, which lasted less than 5 minutes, and it allowed me to apprehend and to understand that it was at that time that our bodies were going to diverge. And when I met Leonardo Garcia, the maestro, he told me that this version was going to be pulsing, and he was bragging about his Latin origins, and he told me that he was Argentinian. I also wanted to talk to you about what inspired me, what were my sources for the travel, for the work I made in the choreography. I was inspired by the work of Denis Larzac, who was working on the chutes, on the falls. And so I found that this was pertinent to work to work with what I had been sharing with the Nizard, and also I worked with the word of Bourissa and Guillaume Bresson, and also I was working with a magazine that was called Les Cahiers Européens de l'Imaginaire, the imagery of European pages. I also watched a movie by Jacques Audiard that Clément that was appreciated by Jacques Audiard, and I appreciate this work, and I thought it was resonating with what we were trying to do in Les Indes Galantes. 2019 version, obviously. So the moment that you see the choreographic are pulsing, suspending silence, falling, shouting. I want you to take the time, if it's possible for you, Noémie, to show the sequence of the earthquake, where I was talking about the voguing. The video is going to last 5 minutes.
Merci Noémie.
Je t'en prie.
Alors,
Thank you, Noémie. You're welcome. So what you just saw was Brillant Soleil, where you see the sun appearing, a bright apparition on a giant screen, and it's followed by an earthquake, which is one of Rameau's effect, which I liked. And the orchestrations created effects. So the climate, we're going to have like earthquake, various types of events. And in order to support this, I asked people to see, I asked Bebop and his team to add an instrument, and it's a way of stomping on the ground to evoke an earthquake. So, and with the voguing, we succeeded in having these wigs with long hair made by Wojciech, long braids. The idea was that through circular movements, we're talking about Ethiopian dances or Middle East dances that inspired me. I had an Ethiopian friend who made movements like this to me. It was great. It comes from us, basically. It was a way of mixing this and this work that was accompanied by the chorus. And it was also worked on by Giselle and the House of Arnold. You have various figures of dancers with wigs dancing this way. It did not go without problem because it was vertigo, but it was powerful.
So inspiration was a sequence of matrix, like a big part of it is being done in an underground. The idea was how the underground space is a marginal space. So I will give Noémie the floor to Noémie for questions, and we'll have the Q&A later, so you will be able to ask me questions directly. Thank you, Bintou, for this wonderful presentation. I have so many questions to ask you. Let's roll. So the first question, the consensus is clear. What makes the strength of this production of Les Indes Galantes is the choreographic work. Indeed, the choice was made to bring this opera ballet to the stage in 2019 to leave intact the libretto of Fuseliers, libretto carrying, as you know, a whole
colonial et raciste de cette époque-là. Et c'est donc aux danseurs qui investissent le plateau qu'il revient de porter par leur geste même une critique de ce livret et de son terreau idéologique. Je ne résiste pas au plaisir en tant que prof de théâtre de mentionner que cette fonction rappelle un peu la fonction du chœur dans les tragédies antiques et même dans les tragédies qu'on retrouve au début de la Renaissance. Ce chœur dont la fonction sur scène était de représenter le corps politique, de faire entendre la voix des citoyens et de commenter l'action de la pièce en temps réel. Cette fonction-là, elle disparaît durant la période baroque et à mon sens, le travail que tu as fait sur les Indes Galantes consiste à ressusciter et à s'approprier cette fonction-là, à la donner aux danseurs. Et j'y vois là un mécanisme de critique interne au spectacle. C'est par la danse que s'introduit un discours critique sur le livret lui-même. Et donc, ma question, c'est est-ce que tu peux nous parler de ce mécanisme et peut-être nous donner un ou deux exemples qui nous aident à comprendre comment est-ce que tu as injecté via la danse de la critique dans ce spectacle?
Alors, ça fait partie des questions que je me suis posées au départ avec l'idée de les laisser sans réponse pour qu'on aille au fait, quoi. Donc, il y a vraiment cette question qui me revenait, c'était comment rassembler, comment on va faire en sorte de rassembler les gens, en fait. Que cette occasion des 350 ans se devait d'être bousculée, de bousculer les habitudes de la maison. Donc, pour moi, il fallait que ça aille bien au-delà du fait d'être dans cet espace-là. Il fallait que ça permette aux gens de s'autoriser à venir à l'opéra. Et donc, dans le processus, je pense qu'effectivement, j'ai essayé de jouer la bonne élève en prenant en compte voilà, la construction d'un opéra-ballet, entendre le livret, les récitatifs. Et finalement, je me suis retrouvée en tension parce qu'il ne s'agissait pas simplement des espaces problématiques concernant le colonialisme, mais il y avait aussi les questions du sexisme et du classisme. Donc, je me suis retrouvée dans une spirale d'interrogation où je me suis dit, il y a peut-être un endroit où je sens que je peux opérer, c'est dans le fait de rassembler les gens. C'est dans le fait de déployer une puissance d'être, en fait. Et donc, là où j'avais une idée de penser les choses macro, en fait, finalement, je les ai réduits au micro et j'ai commencé à m'adresser aux danseurs, tout simplement. Je me suis dit, c'est sur eux que tout va reposer et qu'ils doivent être, comme je l'ai fait pour le film, à l'endroit de pouvoir, à travers leurs gestes, se conter, se la raconter, prendre cet espace de la Bastille. Et donc, la chose qui a opéré, c'est qu'on a commencé à se parler de nos cultures les uns les autres. On a concrètement défini les points forts, la manière dont voilà, les bases sont construites. Donc, pour le crumb, c'était les arm swing, les chest pop et les stomps. Et alors, on a vu les points communs entre les danses. Comme je vous disais tout à l'heure, le voguing qui a cette manière de se célébrer, d'être en flamboyance, qui dialogue avec le walking. Et en fait, c'est à partir de là que c'est orchestré la mise en place.
After that, there was the implementation of the choreographies. And this music, I wasn't listening at the beginning. During the implementation of the choreography with the dancers, I started to see the strength and the deployment of it. I had goosebumps. I remember when we were working on which sequence with the chorus. We had not a lot of time with them. Clément wanted to take away the hierarchies and the chorus and should be where the dancers are, and when there are hierarchies for interpreters and participants, the team and the background would also be shown. So the chorus were the people and the soloist also. And for me, clearly, well, bannissons nos tristes alarmes. During the entire Indes Galantes, Clément wanted to contain the energy, to contain it. It wasn't very easy because 3 hours and 40 minutes to contain things. It's maybe the first time that we express ourselves like that with so much strength. Sometimes it was delicate. So after that, at the end, we explode when with the sequence Bannissons nos tristes alarmes. So we work with the chorus and we see that it's beyond ourselves. It's as if we found each other again after centuries. As the relation dance, music, voice was finally delimited, and during the entire process of the opera ballet, we had a meeting and we were all at the same level to create the voice of the people, and the marginalized people, and we became one, really. Thank you. Another question on the historical dimension of the project. So you also work, or even mainly, on contemporary creations, of course. What does it change for you?
Changer, de travailler un matériau non pas contemporain, mais de l'époque baroque, comme les Indes Galantes. Quelles sont les difficultés, les challenges que ça pose? Et à l'inverse, qu'est-ce que cette distance à l'égard du matériau baroque te permet de faire de façon peut-être plus directe ou plus efficace qu'un matériau complètement contemporain?
Alors, ce n'est pas la première fois que je travaille sur quelque chose qui date. J'avais, en 2014, abordé la question des exhibitions humaines à l'époque coloniale, en fait. Donc, l'une des pièces que tu as citées, ZH, c'était pour zoo humain, en fait. C'est le terme qui a été donné par le groupe Achak qui ont été les premiers à vulgariser ce fait colonial, en fait. Et pour ce faire, j'avais du coup travaillé sur la musique de Philip Glass, Einstein on the Beach. Donc, voilà, on avait essayé justement à cette époque croiser des daguerréotypes en fait qui figuraient dans le décor avec les danseurs qui étaient ensuite à capuche en fait. J'étais déjà dans cette démarche de trouver du lien entre le passé et l'aujourd'hui et la résonance en tension que ça pouvait faire surgir dans nos corps. Dans mon travail, il est question de la mémoire du corps. Il y a une autre pièce que j'ai appelée Strats, avec vraiment l'idée qu'on habite des strates et que c'est celle-ci dans une mécanique d'être convoquée, donc à travers du coup la relation danse-musique-voix qui fait partie de ma démarche artistique, permettent de faire ressurgir des espaces de tension et d'apaiser ces tensions. Donc voilà, en fait, c'est pas la première fois. Et je pense que je suis même attirée par le passé avec quelque chose de cyclique en fait. J'estime que ce qui a été vécu à l'époque des Indes Galantes est quelque chose qui ressurgit et qui résonne avec l'actualité. Nous sommes dans une période de chaos et à l'époque, soit effectivement, c'était le chaos pour beaucoup de continents et beaucoup de pays, quoi. Donc, c'est quelque chose que j'appréhende, que j'interroge, que c'est des va-et-vient. Ce qui se passe néanmoins pour moi, c'est cette affirmation d'une pensée marronne. Donc, on pourra l'aborder plus tard, mais je n'ai pas envie de me mettre à l'endroit de penser que ma démarche est contemporaine. Parce que pour moi, la danse contemporaine, les danses contemporaines marquent un contexte qui est celui des années 80, d'une nécessité de plusieurs chorégraphes de s'émanciper du classique et de créer autre chose par rapport à ce contexte-là. Donc, il va y avoir aussi la génération des chorégraphes qui ont traversé le sida, etc. J'ai envie de revendiquer aujourd'hui que ma danse est marronne, qu'elle répond à une intemporalité, mais pas la même que celle du contemporain, et qu'on ne peut pas l'allier de la même manière avec la danse classique. Voilà. C'est quelque chose qui vient plutôt du bas, des bas-fonds, et qu'elle est aussi une mémoire du fait colonial, de l'esclavage, né en Afrique. La question du marronnage, c'est la fugue en fait d'esclaves. Donc je dis bien fugue en fait d'esclaves pour recréer des sociétés nouvelles. Et en fait, c'est né en Afrique, mais ça s'est vraiment développé après dans les Antilles, les Caraïbes et les Amériques. Mais c'est déjà quelque chose qui existait en Afrique. Et je me revendique plutôt de ça, en fait, parce que j'estime que ce soit les chants comme, ou les rites comme les lewos en Guadeloupe, ou le bouladjel, qui pour moi est la genèse du big box. J'ai besoin de me raccrocher à cette histoire-là qui, pour moi, vient faire figurer la puissance que nos aînés avons en fait.
Tout à fait. Et je veux t'emmener à nous parler davantage du marronnage, de ce que c'est que d'être une artiste marronne. D'ailleurs, j'ai l'impression qu'on a une question dans le chat là-dessus, parce que c'est un concept fort. Juste petit rappel historique. Donc, comme Bintou l'a dit, c'est une pratique qui existait déjà en Afrique, mais qui se développe massivement en Amérique du Sud et dans les Antilles à partir du XVIe siècle. Le marronnage, marooning en anglais, c'est la pratique qui consiste pour les esclavagisés à s'enfuir, à échapper à l'emprise du maître et à fonder...
flee and create new societies, very free societies with elimination of any hierarchy. So this is a practice that developed during the Baroque period. So concretely, what does it mean to be a marooning artist? It's going to be hard to be concrete. I tried to affirm with a certain urgency today the following: you need to be calm and it's not. But concretely, I've worked a lot in French Guiana, in the western part, in Saint-Laurent-du-Baronnet. I met the Marooning, the Bushnagé, which are the descendants of the slaves who perpetuate African traditions from sub-Saharan Africa and reinvent them from there. So they have rights to cure themselves and to fulfill their needs. And they, for example, the Creole gardens have medicinal herbs. So the nègre marron, the Bushnagé, were the first to have thought about ecology. I think there's a De Tambona, philosopher, created Fugitive. Where are you running to? You can find it in Terrestre, the online magazine. He wrote an article on the cosmopolitics of flight, and he affirms this desire to talk about a marooning thought, and it's more progress. It has more progress in the United States, but you can find it also in Maryse Condé and Toni Morrison. You will find these themes in their works. So with regards to what I've done, unconsciously, I try to mark this in order not to have these expressions for Afro-contemporary or contemporary hip-hop. I don't think you can link yourself like that to this current. I need to go to attach to Black cultures and to stop making invisible Black cultures. So Catherine Dunham, as an anthropologist and who created the first African-American ballet in Chicago, and who went to the Caribbean in Haiti and Martinique. So that there's Dembele in the Antilles, were combat forms, capoeira or merengue, or in Angola. So I refer more to these dances that impregnated the hip hop, rather to imagine that dance would come from Western culture. Marooning dance has that for source. Capoeira and Senegalese Saba dances, they impregnate the Glawa from Morocco, are forms that really impregnated our dances so completely. So I cannot develop further because I need to affirm it, to create a rupture. We are at a time where we need to create ruptures. Of arrival in Opéra de Paris, such as like other things, we are in a period of rupture, and there should be something new to come out of it, and a new space to create. As I was saying, the idea of the arrival of social media and the blogs allow me to affirm my identity, a plural identity, African and sexual. And what is the marooning? That will enable me to tell you what the marooning idea is. Okay, so one question I believe that is linked to the marooning as a critic is the question of sexuality. So in preliminary conversions, you told me that the queer dimension of the Indes Galantes project is as important as its racial dimension. In other words, you said as an artist, you're neither man nor woman. So can you tell us about this dimension, the queer dimension of this performance? Can you find it in a performance is when it's so heterosexual? Did you work in a queer way this performance, and what is the, can you tell us about this, where do you find it, and what is the place of queerness and the marooning thought? I will make the link with the marooning and the flight spaces. I was telling you, flight spaces, the forests and the swamps and the wetlands and the mountains in Réunion, living in big places, big cities, the fly spaces are clubbing, clubs, and where voguing was born. And electro also was very strong moment, and they authorized themselves to have several loves. So the queer dimension is, as I was saying in the beginning, I took some distance from the hip hop. I had to extract myself from it and not to be drowned in it. And this opera ballet enabled me to reconnect with the communities of street dance, and I had to tell them who I was. So I started with this phrase of all these people who hadn't seen me, who was a Bintou, the pioneer, the big girl who cannot make any mistakes, who has to be perfect. One thing came when I took the time to watch the Opéra Bastille. It was important. I had to allow me to think things to see things another way. I'm neither man nor woman, and some people could situate themselves to talk about their sexuality, and with time we really we became one. We became a people, and everyone could follow this. So opera has flight spaces for gay people. Oh, okay, super. So there's a space where there were crossings possible where I thought wasn't possible before. So these are flight spaces that we authorize ourselves to celebrate ourselves.
Vraiment au fait de la possibilité d'être ensemble.
With everyone on board, the crew, the b-boys, everybody was for being together and for everyone to be able to celebrate themselves. So in this process, there is someone from house who had this requirement. This is talking about the training that I was talking about, in order to have a slower timeline for the opera ballet, in order to have rehearsals, to be trained. And one person told us that she was not born a girl, and the whole of the dancers and everyone was very happy to realize that it was possible for her to say it. We knew it because on papers there was her birth name, okay, but this person transitioned, and it was greeted with support for the whole dance community. I believe that it's the first time at Bastille that we had a transgender dancer. So Les Indes Galantes is overtly transgender. A lot of premieres here. I like a lot this idea that you told us about, Bintou, that the first step of Maroon thinking is to find these shelter spaces. Now the next question, within the shelter space, without any doubt, you must have been submitted to pressure, because this creative process was complex, very complicated. And Les Indes Galantes was a big kick in the anthill. It's never easy to kick the anthill. Can you please tell us about these challenges, these pressures that you met during the creative process? It's very surprising that even you decide that you belong to a certain genre, other people are projecting. And during the creative process for the Troisième Scène movie, it was a commission that had been done to me and with Clément. And we saw sexist behaviors Okay, two dancers who said, nobody's gonna choreograph my house. And someone else was in favor. So finally, Clément asked me to share this choreographical space. And I thought it was interesting. I said, okay, everybody's gonna occupy this space. What made me sad is that we didn't take the time to talk, to see how and what are we gonna do with the Indes Galantes. There was a kind of confrontation here. I thought it was too bad that we didn't have a chance to dialogue, and we were somehow set aside. And it was sad for me to hear Clément talk about it like if it was part of the process. I think that is another place where it was really violent for me. It's the implementation of the documentary of the Indes Galantes, which is going to appear soon. I thought that it was getting difficult to manage the space, the creative space that I needed to, something that I needed to be alone by myself to create, okay? Because you're vulnerable, you're fragile, and having 4 cameras and people to operate them did not allow me to do so. I had to fight to have my workspace respected, and it was pretty difficult because in this documentary I was almost invisible, and the dancers said, no, it's not possible to do that. So they occupied the space, and they were representing what we did together, and we wanted to highlight the work that I had been doing. But it was very important for me to make sure that this documentary did not ignore me. It was a fight, a battle to make sure that we were eliminating this idea of the noble savages that were in people's imagery. I remember I was in the truck to shoot the movie. I'm really proud of the dancers. It was the first time that I was in that truck. And when it was time to finish, everybody was saying, thank you, thank you. When I was closing the door, I heard like, merci beaucoup.
Qui sont blessants, et on se dit qu'en fait, on n'a pas fini de faire ce travail
So
d'essayer de faire prendre conscience aux gens.
we're not done with our work, okay, to make people realize that savages do not exist, you know. This was a colonial idea. Savages do not exist. Savages do not exist. Savages do not exist. I have other things to say. But I just want people to retain this, that we did this project. The dancers are developing their project now. And I am at Villa Médicis right now in Rome, which is an intrusion, basically. Kaziva is gonna come here to the residency. That's what's important. We opened the door, we set a foot in the door, and we need to open this door even wider, okay? We need to take advantage of that. So I'm leaving of the violence, and it's not without difficulty to manage the colonial era, okay, with sexism, racism, okay, but we need to integrate them and we need to fight it. So we do not want to be diminished, and we have to fight it. Savages do not exist.
Tu nous amènes tout naturellement vers ma dernière question, qui est celle de l'avenir, puisque tu annonces que les danseurs et toi-même, vous dirigez maintenant vers de nouveaux projets. Je mentionnais rapidement certains de ces projets. Il y a eu une installation de créer pour faire voyager le spectacle au Palais de la Porte Dorée et au Centre Pompidou-Metz durant les 2 dernières années. Et puis, tu te diriges vers de nouveaux projets contemporains. Ma question, c'est au moment même où tu te tournes vers ces nouveaux projets divers et variés, qu'est-ce que tu gardes ? Qu'est-ce que tu emportes avec toi de cette aventure, de cette traversée, puisque c'est le mot-clé, de cette traversée des Indes Galantes?
En fait, ça vient valider cette nécessité que j'ai eue de faire la relation danse-musique-voix dans mon travail. mais et de la penser comme je l'ai fait quand j'ai commencé en hip-hop, où il y avait les rappeurs, il y avait les DJ, il y avait du graphe, il y avait les homeboys et les flaggers, des gens qui étaient témoins de notre traversée, et puis il y avait toutes ces danses. Et finalement, c'est cette manière de se rassembler, je l'ai revisité aujourd'hui. Je l'ai d'abord traversé à travers la pièce Strat Quartet, où j'ai un guitariste et une vocaliste qui est plutôt qui travaille plutôt les polyphonies africaines et de jazz. Et finalement, cette préparation à travers cette pièce, cette performance de Strat, m'a permis d'arriver à l'Opéra de Paris outillé d'une expérience en fait sans moyens ou peu de moyens, et que finalement j'ai pu démultiplier avec 100 personnes sur le plateau. Donc mon intuition était bonne, et ça j'en suis assez fière. Ensuite, ce besoin que j'ai de revisiter l'histoire, le fait colonial ou le passé, pour mieux le faire résonner aujourd'hui et en déployer les tensions et avaler.
We want to revisit the colonial space and we want to deploy these tensions. I can realize that it's something that allows me to appease this rapport that I had towards my body when I was doing b-boying, and when I work it with the dancers, there's some kind of a transmission that operates. So with Baroque, am I going to have another meeting with Baroque? We deployed something so powerful that Leonardo Garcio told me that he wanted to work with me, and I given what you're saying with the challenges that I had, I can say that we do not need to revisit the Les Indes Galantes. I think that it was better to leave it as is, even with some frustration, even if because it allows frustration from other artists. And finally, there's something that is inside me, but that comes from the public, the audience, okay? And they want, they're saying that I unleashed something. It's great, another collaboration with my maestro. And now there's going to be a second season for Black Baroque. I just got a message from Ndiaye from the Cultural Services of Chicago, who told me, do not feel that you cannot announce that Chicago will have the great honor of welcoming B2 for 3 months within the cooperation with Atelier Médicis, which is the cultural
organisation de Chicago, dont Experimental Session, Dance Theater Center of Columbia College, U Chicago, Hyde Park Art Center, High Concept Lab.
Tout à fait.
And I would like to repeat this information in our conclusion. So just a small announcement, logistical one. As you can see, we reached 2:30 p.m. Bintou.
Passe 3 heures, je suis là.
Allez, alors donc on s'autorise à rester 15 minutes de plus pour que Bintou réponde à certaines questions qui ont été posées dans le chat. Alors, je me tourne donc vers ces questions. Il y en a beaucoup, il va falloir faire une sélection.
J'en profite pour dire coucou à Cathy Bouvard, voilà, qui a mis en place tout ça aux ateliers Médicis et qui m'a permis de venir à la villa Médicis. Donc, coucou Cathy, coucou Renan, et puis voilà, merci.
Hi Cathy, and thank you Nicole Bierman as well. Says hi. We have a question.
So much for sharing your beautiful, extraordinary work. Les gens aiment ton travail. You said earlier that you spoke with the performers about the history of slavery, the problematics of the opera. Do you have a sense of how much the audiences knew of these histories? Donc, tu nous as dit que tu as parlé aux danseurs de l'histoire de l'esclavage et des problématiques de l'opéra. À ton sens, est-ce que tu crois que les publics, que les membres du public étaient conscients de cette histoire? Est-ce qu'ils amènent ces histoires avec eux? Et je pense que cette question nous amène à penser un peu la question de la blanchité du public. Donc ça c'est une question. Après, si...
That's a question. And if I regroup with another question, let's see. It's moving fast. I'm saying hi to people who are saying hi to me. We also
De celle du public, de ce que le public sait et de sa blanchité. On a une question de Leah Marquet. I was struck by how Dembele's contemporary movements align powerfully with the Baroque music to confront the story of the opera. I'd love to learn about the artistic process for producing the dance. Does it begin with the music or the story or the dancers? Also, what is Dembele working on at the Villa Medici? OK, donc on a deux questions là, deux excellentes questions qu'on va grouper. Et la première, c'est dans le processus artistique qui amène à produire donc, ce travail chorégraphique, où est-ce que tu commences? Est-ce que tu commences avec le livret? Est-ce que tu commences avec la musique? Ou est-ce que tu commences avec les danseurs? Et sa deuxième question, donc qu'est-ce qui guide, qu'est-ce qui amène le mouvement? Et la deuxième question, c'est sur quoi est-ce que tu travailles maintenant à la Villa Médicis et à quoi est-ce que ça ressemble de travailler en tant que chorégraphe en période de Covid? Voilà, donc là, je pense qu'on a 3 bonnes questions. On va s'arrêter là pour le moment.
Alors, la première question, redis-moi, en fait, c'est par
First question, would you mind repeating? We're talking about the relationship with the public. Is the public aware of this historical background that you're working, and then whiteness of the public? I don't know, because you have several audiences. I know that I had feedback through social networks, and I believe that people are enamored with the project. Either they came to live that show, or they show it on Arte, on the TV channel Arte, and they are captivated. I don't believe that. I believe it's more complicated than that. How we are interrogating, how we are questioning the colonial era and the fact that a work like this could come to reality. You have young people today who are saying to us, it's every day. It's our everyday reality. So, and it's good that people woke up. It's blowing me away. To me, it means that it's very complex and it's very long, and maybe not why I'm alive that things are going to improve. Second question, could you remember now? Where do you start with the creative process? Are you starting with the history, the music, or the moment? In fact, I think that I was charging my batteries with a version of William Christie. You can see it on YouTube. It's a caricature. So I was, okay, you're challenging me? Okay, let me see. A bit like this. After that, for the opera and ballet, as I told you, I was completely imbued with what was going on in French news and in the world as well. This charge, what I'm using it for is I'm just silencing it, and then I connect with that music that I found on the iTunes, which lasted 44 minutes. I use that music, and with that music came movements, and I was able to take possession of these repetitive dancing, circular dancing, and you can see some experts on YouTube and how I create materials. And finally, I revisit the various shows where I worked with other collaborations, and I'm going to use these materials, which are mine, Fat Quartet, Mon Solo Bonaparte, collaborations with the Nizard, as I was mentioning earlier. All these materials are rubbing against each other to espouse Clément's approach. And within that, I'm telling the dancers, I'm orchestrating, I'm choreographing, and sometimes I give them, I leave them that space, a space for freestyle, maybe improvisation. But don't forget, because if I do this, for example, I cannot my my shoulder cannot do it, and some dancers can do 10 times better than this. So I'm trying to give them instructions for this approach, this circularity, these repetitive movements, and within that, I give them some space in order for them to use their own way to share that. Abla did choreographies in electro, Cynthia in copying, and she was other choreographies, and I give them those spaces on 340 minutes. Okay, I can allow that. It's a constant dialogue. There was a lot of times when I did choreographies within what Clément wanted. My research was not obvious. It was not obvious to work with this and that and various accessories, but I have an approach of transmitting things where I'm not the only choreographer, but I let the dancers create their own. And three more questions. Three excellent questions, and the first two go together very well.
Or improvisation as a choreographic practice that is at both radically oriented toward the present and also a way of harnessing trans-temporal energies and activating notions of race central to the Baroque and the present. Donc, est-ce que tu peux parler du rôle du freestyle et de l'improvisation dans ce processus et de façon plus spécifique, la façon dont le freestyle, qui est une pratique orientée à la fois, qui est clairement orienté, ancré dans le présent, mais qui est aussi une façon de penser de façon transhistorique, de capter des énergies transhistoriques et d'activer certaines questions raciales qui existent à la fois dans le baroque et le présent. Donc, en gros, est-ce que tu peux nous parler du freestyle et de la façon dont le freestyle permet de faire dialoguer le présent et le baroque? Ça, c'est la première question. La deuxième question,
on the transnational aspect, dimension of the aesthetics that you use.
What does it mean to you to engage with all of these different places at once? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire pour toi?
What does it mean for you to work at the same simultaneously with aesthetics from the Black diaspora community that from the Americas, Africa, and Europe? Earlier, you said that you felt a connection with Maestro, with Latin America. Can you tell us about that? And the last question, we were regrouping them in French. It's shorter, but very interesting. Can you talk to us about the relationship between what you called the flight and the appropriation of a space? How does it work? Is it a contradiction? How do you combine both? Thank you. So I am not a university professor. Sorry, I will try to remember the questions. Please, improvisation. The first question is about improvisation to combine the present and Baroque. My first freestyle, I remember it. I was 10 years. I was the only girl, just boys around. And I need to find the energy. I'm 10 years old. I'm shy. And I don't master my dance. And I want to go to the center where they're big. They have a lot of energy. They take the space. And there's the rhythm. There's something, it's a right. It goes beyond your own limits. It's not. It's a societal dimensions. To be a singleton in the group in freestyle, we defended the style of the group of the suburb, and we had to be stronger than the other departments. So there's a confrontation, styles and territories. So through the possession of space, how we develop ourselves against other people, and how we appropriate the space. So the styles, the different groups,
and different territories were present. So when we were from 93, we didn't have the same way of dancing in the Département 91. We didn't have the Germans were not musical. We had the groove, and that for years it was like that. We're too good in grooves. Germans are not. So the Turks came and that changed, but at a certain time, there are places where it's only technique, but we have a groove, a way to how to appropriate the music. So we have this very strong relationship with the music with regard to hip hop. The BPM, it has changed. So there's a confrontation with music. When Leonardo arrived, I heard Rameau, and that was hip hop. But to rehearse, to go over, we did the good BPM, which was Leonardo's one, and I started grooving. Now I feel it. Dun, 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 dun. There, I felt it. I was grooving. Fantastic. So you combine all the questions in one answer. So no more questions. I think I will end here and here because it's the end, but thank you for this wonderful. I'm sorry if I did not answer your question, but I will come to Chicago. I'm coming. In August, I'll be there until October, and I need to practice my English. I need to speak it. Okay, so donc, j'aimerais conclure en revenant brièvement sur le concept clé de cette série.
Leonardo Garcia Alarcón. Je vais finir, I'm going to end by quoting him. He has in the program of the performance a very provocative statement where he's thinking about the question.
Quel est le secret de la qualité de Rameau? Quand il parle de la qualité de la voix pour Rameau, et il dit. Je vais paraphraser sa citation.
People empathize less today with, people empathize less today with the technique, the singing technique that 19th century opera developed with its strong vibratos.
Il y a de grands vibratos.
The music that developed after the birth of microphones, which has enabled the human voice to be more stable. And that is what they find in Baroque music, voice in its most natural state. Actually, all of Western pop music is Baroque music, a tune with a simple accompaniment. In fact, the Baroque never ended. End of quotation. So I want to end on this provocation that the Baroque never ended as a category that operates across aesthetic, historical, political realms, and that as an ongoing process, it demands our critical, artistic, and scholarly attention. Another ongoing phenomenon that demands our attention is Bintou's sustained collaboration with the University of Chicago. So I will just repeat what Bintou announced earlier. As part of her residency with the Villa Chicago program sponsored by the French consulate, Bintou will be in Chicago, more specifically in the South Side, August 2021 through October. We hope to have her on campus, and we are currently negotiating the rights in order to be able to organize an in-person screening of Les Indes Galantes in her presence on campus in October. So for everyone who dropped in the chat comments and told us how much they loved it and how much they wish they could see the whole performance, stay tuned. Hopefully in October, we'll be able to screen the whole production. Bintou, thank you so much for joining us today. Merci d'être venu. This is just the beginning of this collaboration. This is to be continued. And for everybody here, thanks for tuning in, and please stay tuned for the next event in the Black Baroque series, which is scheduled for April 28th at 6 p.m. We will discuss the new classic Black Baroque play, American Moor, with its creator, performer, and playwright, Keith Hamilton Cobb. More excellence coming our way. More anon. Thank you, everybody, and be well. Bintou, à très bientôt.
Merci Nathalie, merci Marcel, merci Brandy, merci Noémie.
À très bientôt.
Bye bye to all. See you soon.